Alright everybody, welcome to episode 282 of Psykos Platters, most days powered by coffee. Each and every time. I got it in the old school DC mug. I like certain DC. I grew up reading comic books for 20 years, pretty much 73 to 93. I liked a lot of Marvel and DC and other ones too. Whatever I could get my hands on. My favorite, of course, is Batman. Superman is not really one of my favorites, but my favorites would be Batman and Justice League and Deadman, the good old Green Lantern Green Arrow series from the 60s, that kind of stuff. Really, really good. So there on that bit. Sorry it took me a few weeks to get back to you guys. Part of it has been life has just been so damn busy, mixed with, once again, I got sick. In the next few weeks I will be having some tests again on me. I'm not going to go into it more than that, but so life has happened, that's all. So for this particular video here, we're going to title it Beatle Finds. That's right, we got ourselves a handful of Beatle finds, don't we? So I've got a couple albums and I got a couple 45s to show you, all from various different time points. So first thing on the album finds, in case you don't know, but most of you guys in the VC and on some of the Facebook vinyl groups know that Barnes & Noble is doing a 50% off clearance vinyl section. It is not all the vinyl. They are not clearancing all the vinyl. It is just certain titles are getting clearanced in each store. Okay, so I happened to catch these about maybe 2 weeks ago, and I said, you know what, I would rather have the original albums of these, but since they are, at least to me, a little not so easy to find, that's why I pulled the trigger on these two anyway. These are solo Beatle albums, okay? Of course I did my research like always. So the first one here is Paul McCartney's Flowers in the Dirt from June of 1989. That's right, but this is the archival edition. Here's front, here's the back. And yes, I know this originally came out in June of 1989. And like I said, I cannot seem to find the original on this. The selling point for me to pull the trigger to buy this, and this normally lists for about almost 35 bucks, so I got it for 17 and some change for this double album. The second album has, it is all unreleased Paul McCartney, Elvis Costello duet demo sessions for this album, which only a couple of the tracks landed on this album in the first place. So Flowers in the Dirt, released in June of 1989, recorded October 1984 through January 1989. This deluxe edition, of course, came out in March of 2017 with, like I said, the full extra LP of the demos. 5 singles came off of this. My Brave Face, this one, Ouest Les Loyal, I probably screwed that up, Figure of 8, and Put It There. On a vinyl standpoint, this one did get released on a 45, but a white label promo only. It is I'm led to believe one of the top 10 American McCartney vinyl releases that are rare. I found that sucker for a dime at a Salvation Army years and years ago, and well, I turned around and sold that too. Personnel on this album, of course, Paul and Linda. Robbie McIntosh, who was in the Pretenders, he comes into the fold now, along with Hamish Stewart, who originally started out in Average White Band. Of course, Elvis Costello's on this. David Gilmour, from Floyd, he plays guitar on 1 or 2 tracks on this. Greg Hawkes from the Connors, he also does 1 or 2 tracks on this. Dave Maddox, formerly of Fairport Convention, he's on here. Trevor Horn from Buggles, and yes, and of course, producer extraordinaire Nicky Hopkins, keyboard pianist, session extraordinaire, and others happen to be on this really good album. Page to my Paul Harvey impression. Page 2. So, Flowers in the Dirt. If you got a Barnes & Noble, go get it. So this next one, I was really looking forward to getting this. I got it on CD. I got it in the American CD little box set when it came out, actually. From November of 2002, George Harrison's final solo album, the one he was working on while he was still alive, but didn't get released till post-haste. November 2002, Brainwashed. This one here, this is the front, this is the back. So, we recorded 1988 to 2002. It was a top 20 in the U.S. The two singles that came off of this, at least in the United States, Any Road and Stuck Inside a Cloud. I happen to like, those are probably two of my favorites, along with Devil in the Deep Blue Sea. And Brainwashed kind of is a neat ending of things as well on this album. The original title that was mentioned by George in an interview in 1999 was he was going to call it Portrait of a Leg End. Get it? Instead of Legend, Leg End. It's like, that smacks of Monty Python right there. What am I going to name it? I'm going to name it Portrait of a Leg End. Then he changed his mind on that later and said it's going to be called Your Planet is Doomed Volume 1. That would have been funny to see that on an cover. So, like I said, George died November 29th, 2001, and it was mostly completed by his death, but he left instructions to his son Danny, and smaller way to Jeff Lynne too, and Danny and Jeff Lynne carried on to finish this work. Now the personnel on this one, of course, George, Danny's on here too, Jeff Lynne's on this as well. Session drummer extraordinaire and solo Beatle confidant Jim Keltner. He plays drums on all of this. Ray Cooper, who's worked percussion on a bunch of Harrison albums. Jules Holland from Squeeze in his own solo career, he's on here. Mike Mann does a track. He's from Oingo Boingo. He does a track on this. Herbie Flowers, bassist, session extraordinaire too, who's worked on some of George's material. And lastly, George's friend John Lord from Deep Purple plays keys on a track as well. This went gold in the U.S. Now in 2002, yes, there was an original pressing of this on vinyl, but not American. It turned out that Parlophone, so UK, Parlophone in the UK, cranked this out and then exported it to us. So there was no official American release of this. This came out in the remaster program, and also what I still think was neat is made in Germany. So it's German vinyl, and it's nice quality vinyl. I really like how this sounds, honestly. Go get this if you have the chance on that. So, okay, 45 finds. These first two came from my friend Doug Fields. His friend had about, we'll say, 10 to a dozen boxes of 45s. Of course, Doug got through them, and another dude got there before Doug got there. So instead of sloppy seconds, I got, I don't know, not thirsty thirds. That don't sound right. So these two are this from August of 1964 on the MOC label, Murray Kellum, I Dreamed I Was a Beatle. Murray Kellum pretty much was in the music scene from around 1961 to 1978. Like I said, this came out in August of 1964. MOC Records was a subsidiary of High Records out of Memphis. They were around from 1962 to 1971. Previously, Murray had a minor hit in the summer of '63, Long Tall Texan, which made it to number 51 on the charts. He died in 1990 in a plane crash at age 47. Go listen to this on YouTube. It's minorly amusing. At least that's what I think. So this next one is a solo 45. And I've never come across this before. Okay, so I was a little ignorant. I had to do some research. Dark Horse, George Harrison. I thought this would have landed on an Apple label. I was so wrong. So this came out in November 1974, and of course your session people on this, of course George, Billy Preston, Robin Ford, and others are in on this. This portion of this comes from 45 Cat, okay, because like I said, I thought originally maybe this was a white label promo, but I was wrong because it would have the P designation, I said P, followed by a hyphen and then your numbers, okay, along with, if I remember correctly, I think there was a star on it too, on the label. But no, this was actually the way the label was originally put out. It turns out that this is a first pressing of that 45 because, oh, and it also was made in the Jacksonville, Illinois Capitol factory, alright? But the reason why this is a first pressing is because simply of this. It says recorded in England. Now I know you're thinking, well, whoop-de-doo. A lot of these Apple 45s were recorded in England, but it turned out this one wasn't. And they're like, uh-oh. And then to top that off, you probably can't see it, but it's a little sloppy text, but it says manufactured by Apple Records. It says it on the bottom, okay? So first pressing, Jacksonville, Illinois. This is what it looks like. But there was 3 pressings. The second pressing, excuse me, the Made in England's removed. Apple Records is on the top. It's actually more difficult to find that pressing. That pressing came out of the LA and the Winchester, Virginia plants. And then finally, the only one I've ever seen of this before, which turns out to be the third and final pressing, is that it's a custom faces label. In other words, it's George's face. But it's a custom label. The picture sleeve is actually very difficult to find. And this one was not released in a regular Apple factory sleeve. It turned out they just released it in a regular white sleeve, which that just seemed a little odd to me. But I'm glad to have this in my collection. I always liked that song anyway. Okay, these next two, and my last two 45s, they came from when I went up in November and checked out this very cool record store near where I lived in northern Illinois. Wish I could get my fingers to work here so I could turn the damn page. There we go. So there was this one record store, and I think I might have brought them up before in a previous episode, had half a wall of 45s. Well, I bought a stack. 2 buying trips total was a stack of this many high. Okay. Eventually, we're going to do a 45 episode, and it's all going to be just what I got, because I got some nice nuggets out of this. But I got these 2 Beatle 45s, which one of them I've never seen before, and then the other one I haven't seen in 30 years. So this one here, from February 1965, 4 by the Beatles, that's right. It is the second Capitol EP. The first one was 4x4 from May of 1964. This was the last USP that was released, and it was on the charts for 5 weeks, peaking only at number 68. Now, I'm happy to have this. The records came out to be about 75 cents to $1 a piece, is what I spent for these things. So to pay this for that, I think is really, really nice. Now I just need to find the cardboard EP sleeve that this went in and join them together. That would be super sweet. Alright, so my last one. In the 80s, in the mid-80s, I got a hold of one of these from Skip's Full Circle Records in Crystal Lake, Illinois. A near minty copy of this. This is not near minty by any means, but it's probably at least a VG. And I sold my first collection after I had my kid be born. Diapers, formula, bills. You had to do what you had to do, you know. Well, then I ended up finding it again, and I am glad I did. From May of 1964, on Swan, Sie liebt die. Yes, Sie liebt die, which is German for she loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, The rest of this information comes from yokono.co.uk and BeatlesBooks.com, Steve Hoffman's forums, and PopHistoryDig.com, okay? Because this is the long end of the part. So, there were four different pressings of this particular 45. This is a Type 1A Philly Mallard press. There was no picture sleeve made for this 45. It made it to number 97 on the Billboard charts. There was a question of legality in regards to if Swan was allowed to really be able to release this. When Capitol US was offered both German songs of this and Komm Gib Dir Mein Hand, I hope I said that right, German fans, they chose Komm to be on the Something New album. They rejected using Salibdi anyway. Okay? Swan thought they could use this in their release because even though it was a German version of She Loves You, their contract said they could release She Loves You. Alright? So they ended up having to get, this was semi-sneaky, they got a German Odeon 45 copy and transferred it to this. Capitol found out about it, I guess, in '64 and was not pleased. I am led to believe that this thing was maybe on the market no more than 60 days. I'm not sure how true that part is. So, okay, this ended up being a bootleg in 1976. As far as for, let's see here, Canadian copies on Capitol Swirl are rare, but what appears to be scarce is an Australian 45 put out in June of 1964 of Komm Gib Dir Mein Hand and Salibdi on the Flip. Failed to chart and only sold around 2,000 copies. Now, the other thing is there's a tougher one than this. And I didn't even know anything about this until I started doing research. But it appears that Swan tried one more tactic after this 45 was put out. They thought maybe I'll Get You could end up being a hit, and so they sent to radio stations promotional one-sided 45s of I'll Get You. Did not even know they did that, and it's an interesting piece to look at. The last recorded one that I saw that went up for auction in June of 2017 went for nearly $900 in near mint condition. I was like, holy crap. So, another thing though, interesting enough, was in 1978, and I'd love to find one of these. There was a bootleg 45 on the White Swan label, looked just like this, but it's Komm Gib Dir Mein Hand, with the B-side being How Do You Do It? Rumor has it that it might not totally be a bootleg. It was maybe something that was created for a 1978 Beatles convention. It could be a mix of both for all I know. Alright? So, this label almost changed Beatle history. And I know you're sitting here going, alright, Mighty Psycho, what the hell are you talking about? So, they put out She Loves You in September 1963. Alright? Didn't do real well. 1,000 copies it sold, mostly. If you find one that does not have the Don't Drop Out on that black label, you got an original, chances are. Original first press. You got something nice. So they put that out in September 63, didn't do squat. Now, Dick Clark still was loosely associated with Swan. He did not co-own it anymore by that time, but he would push for some of the Swan Records product through the American Bandstand show. He played it on Bandstand, and if you remember Bandstand, for some of you older folks like me, it only went to 71 on the Radar record out of a possible 98. It was middling. and some of the audience was giggling at the portrait of the Beatles, and basically Dick Clark didn't think they were going to go anywhere. That was his words. So between September and November, a couple different things happened. At first, Swan almost had a chance to get two things happen. Number one, Brian Epstein said in Basic to Swan, hey, we'll give you next shot at the next single. Now, I've heard one of two things on this story, okay, and I'm not sure which is true. It's either A, hey, you got to buy 50,000 copies pre-ordered up front for you to have rights to this next single, or it was a contract stipulation that She Loves You had to sell 50,000 copies in 1963, and it didn't happen. Either, it didn't happen. What was that next 45 that Swan could have released? I Want to Hold Your Hand. That's right. I Want to Hold Your Hand almost landed in Swan Records, which they had spotty distribution in parts. Okay? So that's factor one. Secondly, Epstein, while talking to, I think his name was Resnick, one of the co-owners of Swan, in late '63, went off and said, hey, he goes, because Resnick went off and said that She Loves You didn't do real good, and, you know, I'm just not sure about all of this. He was going to give up on it, in essence, and Epstein goes off and says, just hold on this. He goes, because we got Ed Sullivan. We signed Ed Sullivan. They're going to make, 1964, they're going to make 3 TV appearances. That's what he said. And Resnick's going, wish you would have talked to me first. I could have got you on Dick Clark's bandstand. That's what he said. But chances are, with Dick Clark having the attitude of, well, I don't think they're going to go anywhere, just didn't happen. So in other words, instead of I Want to Hold Your Hand and the Ed Sullivan Show appearances, you know, for Capitol Records for Hold and that, it could have been I Want to Hold Your Hand on Swan, and maybe did a guest appearance or two on American Bandstand, and possibly could have went nowhere in America. That's how close things could have messed up. Now you know. Knowing's half the battle. G.I. Joe. Okay, so alright. New subs, guys. New subs. Julius Jabbar, David Newton, Chris Propfee, Musically Obsessed, Genealogy Mad, Snake 41S, The Digital Gramophone, KJKVR156. Some of these I might have mentioned before, but I couldn't remember. So Flash Gordon's one record at a time. Scott White Comedian, Tiger Lily JKT, Peter Cage, and Chris Has the Spins. Thank you all for being in the Platters network. Of course, Wax Museum with Ronnie Dark, Night Owl Lounge with Mike Adams, 6 to 10 p.m. Central Standard Time, 6 to 9 for Ronnie, 9 to 10 for Night Owl, all on WVOA, Syracuse, New York, 87.7. You can check them out on Tuned In or Uber stations like I do. Excellent Sunday night radio show. Geez, I can't think of anything else right now, guys. I'm sorry on that. And of course, I love you, YouTube vinyl community and the VC people. I think the next video we're going to do, I got some monkey finds and some VCLT. I think that's what we're going to do next, okay? I love you guys. Take care. God bless. Rock on. And see ya on the flip side. Flippity flip.